Hello, hello. I'm back again with another tag just for you. And that is going to be It's a 10 But book tag. And I was tagged by another bibliophile Reads, who I think might have actually been the creator of this tag. I will definitely link him down below as well as the original video if it's not his. But anyway, this is a very short tag, and I love that because I am such a long-winded person. If I can get a tag that has 5 questions, then maybe we won't be here all day. I don't know. I am going to go ahead and tell you if you are tagged. And yeah, here's the people that I specifically tagged, but of course anybody can do these. And so I'm going to go with Pages by Pego, Books to Ashes, Sash Reads, Sin's Book Nook, and Bandana Mom. Yeah, if you're like, I don't know if you said my name, I'll have you linked down below, and then there's the names right there. So I have written out my answers because I'm trying to fill this puppy up. I also drew a leaf. I traced one that I found in the yard. It had an ombre. It was not an ombre of green to purple, but I was reading Frankenstein, so all of my pages were green and purple for the month of October. But anyway, we'll get on to the tag now. So, question number 1. A book that is over 500 pages. So I'm going to go with The Count of Monte Cristo. This is a story about revenge. It has a guy who gets sent to prison and then escapes prison. It's got some Icarus references in there. And then he comes back as like this rich person in order to enact revenge on a whole bunch of other people. There's also this cool thing that I remember where this girl was being given poisons all of her life in small doses so that she wouldn't die if someone tried to actually poison her. I don't know why that's like the one thing that I really remember about this book, but there was lots of just little bitty elements about it that I really enjoyed. Now, I will tell you that The Count of Monte Cristo has an abridged version as well as just the regular version. The abridged version is about 500 to 550 pages. That is the one that I read by mistake. It was assigned reading to me in high school, so I read it. And I didn't know that I had the wrong version. I was supposed to read the non-abridged version, which is like 1,100 pages long. So I will tell you there are some differences just based off of the fact that there was things that were brought up in class where I was like, I didn't read about that at all. But I feel like you definitely get a really good story in that condensed 500-something page book. So if you start reading the original full length and you're like, this is just too long-winded, I like the story, but it's just taking too long to get there, then I recommend switching over to the abridged version. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking the easy route. There are so many times in high school where I tried to find the children's version with pictures in it for some of the books that I was assigned because they were just so boring. And I have ADHD, specifically the ADD portion. And yeah, trying to do anything that I consider to be pointless and boring is like pulling teeth. So I had to do what I had to do, and that was try to find a children's version, and guess what? I couldn't even get through that. It was so boring. I hated Great Expectations. So, yeah. But anyway, we're going to go with The Count of Monte Cristo. It's fun, revenge, action, rich stuff, disguised persons, prison and breaks. It's fun. It's fun. You should definitely try out The Count of Monte Cristo. It has inspired so much modern fiction and movies and songs and all sorts of things that you probably don't even know about. So definitely check that out. Next is going to be a pre-order. This is not a book that I have currently pre-ordered. This is a book that I would have pre-ordered in high school because I like to make things slightly original on this channel by giving it some sort of twist, if at all possible. So the twist that I have made it for the It's a 10 But book tag is that all of the books will be ones that I either read in high school or college. That's my twist. So there are going to be a lot of like classics and modern classics, those sorts of things. So anyway, I'm going to go with Atonement. This does have a this one does have a movie adaptation with Keira Knightley. So if you like her, you should definitely watch it. Also, the other guy's famous too, but I can't remember his name right now, but it is neither here nor there. And yeah, so this one is about this is a person who gets wronged, and in this case it's the guy who gets wronged, and he falls in love with the girl, and the girl's sister spots them out in like a field doing it, and I think that she had a little bit of a crush on him, So I think she knew that she was lying and making up things and saying that he was assaulting the sister. I think she knew. But, yeah, so the sister accuses him of doing stuff, and then he is given the choice of either going to prison for his crimes, which the person who was told to have been the victim of the crimes is like, no, he did not do this stuff. My sister's lying, which was true in this case. Okay, it was true in this book. And so they're like, well, you've been accused, so you're either going to go to prison or you're going to go to war. And so he chooses to go to war. This is a real thing that used to happen, and this was back in like World War II times, but this was like a real option that people were giving after committing crimes in the United States, which is just kind of baffling, but also not super surprising, because think of the amount of like mortality rates and stuff that were happening during these wars. Especially like when you get to like the Vietnam War and all of that kind of stuff, the amount of people that come back with either severe PTSD or like as amputees, whatever sort of things. Like there's a lot of bad crap that can happen to you, even if you never see action. If you never have to like see someone drop dead in front of you, you can still wind up with PTSD coming back from the military. That was the case with me. That was the case with my brother. Well, he did see some things that I did not see, even though I was in more of a dangerous situations than he was. He was in Alaska like the whole time. But he had friends that died. He saw a car flip during an exercise, and he had been friends with the driver, and the driver died. There's lots of stuff that happens with war. And so it does kind of tell you a little bit about the state of mind of the nation when they're like, hey, going to the military is equal punishment for your crime as going to prison. And I say this, I don't want to upset anyone by making this comparison, but I will say this with giving you my reasoning for it, okay? I can kind of understand why they thought this way. There are a lot of similarities between prison and being in the military, specifically being in the Navy. I don't know so much about I don't think there's as much comparison when it comes to the other branches of the military, because if you are on land, there is not the same level of seclusion that there is when you are on a boat. If the boat goes down, you're dead. If something goes down and you're on land, there's a chance of escape. But if something goes down on the boat, you're dead. Like, that's just how it works. So there is a constant level of fear, which I think people might have when they're in prison as well. It's hard to have, like, consistent happy moments in situations where you're completely isolated. You have to detach from your family members and your loved ones in order to cope, because you have no control over when you're going to be able to talk to them or see them. You cannot have any behavioral issues whatsoever, because if you do, there are going to be severe ramifications for that. So in prison, you can go to SEG, and you can, solitary, whatever you want to call it, and they're just going to give you your meals, and that's the only human contact you're going to have for that day. On a ship, if you get in trouble, they're going to dock your pay. They're going to take away half of your paycheck. They might demote you so that you permanently lose, like $1,000 a month, maybe, just with that demotion. They can kick you out if it's bad enough, and it'll be a dishonorable discharge, which means that you're going to have a harder time getting a job in the real world, which is the same way that sometimes people have a harder time getting a job after coming back from prison, because it says felon on their record. So that sort of stain that follows you from having felon on your record, there's also a stain that follows you if you get dishonorably discharged. So are they equivalent? No, I'm not going to say that. I have not been in the military and been in prison, so I can't make that distinction. But I will say that I have followed Jessica Kent, very, very interesting YouTuber that talks about her life in prison. I think she was there for a shorter stay of maybe a year to 2 years. Those are the kind of comparisons I'm making. not the ones between being in the military and being a lifer or being in there for a long-term sentence. I'm talking about people that are there for short-term sentences. Because you know that there's an end date in sight, and there's a big difference between knowing there's an end date if you just follow the rules and do what you're supposed to, versus having zero control and knowing that you're stuck there for the rest of your life. I would never, ever, ever make that comparison. To completely different things. But as far as short term, there is the isolation aspects, there is the danger element, there is the bad food that recycles where you're eating the same thing every 45 days. It's the same menu, and they use it for everything. Oh my gosh, the amount of rice and fish that I had when I was in the Navy. They would take the spices that they used one night, so they would put some like spice on the fish. Then the next day they would use the same sort of spice on the chicken. So you better hope you like whatever seasoning they chose, because you're going to be eating it all week long. Yeah. Phone calls were limited to 5 minutes while you were on the ship, and you pretty much had to wait in a line for an entire hour just to make your phone call, and that was on a good day. There were also days where they would shut down communications completely, so you weren't making phone calls. There's also times where they would shut down emails, so maybe you could receive emails, but you weren't getting to send any. There was a time where I thought my husband had died because I had not heard from him for 3 days, and then the person like at the highest level of my division called me to his berthing, which is like, why are you calling me to your bedroom? Like, this has to be some serious news where you want to do it outside of the eyes of everyone else. I thought my husband had died. So like, yeah, I think it's safe to say that there are some similarities from the dramas that are faced from the seclusion, isolation, and all of this, that sort of thing that you face in prison, that you face when you're in the military. All that is to say, again, getting back to the point of the fact that the government decided that it was a similar punishment to put some in the military, I'm in agreement with that. That was a long way of telling you that I agree with that. The other thing is like, okay, so in prison there's a thing called furlough. And so if a loved one dies, you might get an approval for a furlough in order to go to their funeral, but it is not guaranteed. It doesn't matter how closely related that person is to you. Well, guess what? In the military, it's the same thing. If you're underway and someone dies that's close to you, if they're not an immediate family member, meaning your husband or your child, or if you're not married, maybe your mom or your dad, if it's not that close of a relation, you're probably not going home. And even then, there are situations where even if it is your wife or your husband, they're not letting you off the boat to go. That's just how it is. They are in control of who you talk to, how you talk to people, who you can be friends with, because you're not supposed to be friends with people that are higher rank. Like if you're enlisted, you're not supposed to be buddy-buddy with the officers. If people are in the same division as you, or even on the same ship, you're not allowed to have a relationship with them that is not completely platonic. I have seen people be booted off the boat because they had a boyfriend or girlfriend on the ship. I was also in the military during the height of the do not ask, do not tell era, meaning that if you were gay, you were gone. If it was suspected you were gay, you were gone. Yeah, there was lots of stuff. Man, when I went into boot camp, you couldn't even have your hair, like if you were a girl, your hair was not going to be longer than this. And they didn't care. They chopped it off. I got my haircut done by the devil on Halloween. I'm not even kidding. The woman was dressed as the devil and her nose fell off while she was giving me the haircut. And I was like, I am not having a military haircut. They are going to butcher it. I saw the videos, people that got the haircut. It was horrible. I have never had a military haircut because it's just so bad. But like, yeah, your options, your rights, all of those sort of things are changed. And like, you are literally signing a document that is saying that you are government property. You can have like legal action taken against you if you get a sunburn. I'm not kidding. A sunburn. Like, you can get an Article 15 for getting a sunburn. I almost got that one time, but I toughed it out because if I had said I am too burnt to work, I might have faced getting an Article 15 because I was. My skin was purple. I got really, really burnt when we were in Turkey. I went white water rafting, and the tops of my shoulders literally were purple, and they had blisters. And I was doing kitchen detail. There's like 4 months out of your service where they will make you work in the kitchen, in the galley and all that. And so I was doing that. I was having to bend down, like washing dishes or picking up pans and all this other kind of stuff. I was so burnt. I was literally like going, like anytime I would have to move even a little bit. Oh my gosh. Like you would feel the seams on your clothing. Oh, I don't know if you've ever been that sunburnt, but it was like 3rd-degree burns as far as I'm concerned. Like it was so bad. It was so bad. Oh, but yeah, so like there's lots of comparisons to be made when it comes, like it's like okay, here's the scenario. All right, because some of y'all are probably still like, why are you comparing the military to prison? All right, it's like those guys who go out in the street and they're trying to trip people up that are not on the same side as them. So they go with like this list of quotes. This was happening a lot with like the whole like Trump going against Biden or whatever, or just any presidents going against presidents. They would go out with these list of quotes, and they would go up to like a Trump supporter, and they would be like, yeah, so, you know, Trump said this, and this, do you agree? And they'd be like, yeah, he's so smart, I agree with everything Trump said, yeah, he's right. And then they'd be like, all right, and then Biden said this, and this. Do you agree with that? Oh no, that's horrible. And they'd be like, what if I told you that I just reversed it and the things you said were awesome that Trump said were actually the things that Biden said, and the things that I said Biden said are the things that Trump said, and then they're just stuck there like like a deer in the headlights because they're like, oh, because they don't think for themselves. But, yeah, so I think sometimes when someone is trying to make a comparison and you're like, you totally don't agree just at face value, you can't kind of hear what they're saying. And that's the point I'm making with that. Like, if you hear what I'm saying and you're not automatically dismissive because you're like, you ain't been to prison, you can't say nothing about it, then I would just say keep that in mind. There are similarities. And if I had a list and I said, okay, these were my... if I took a list from prisoners and they're like, these are my experiences, and then I gave you a list of the stuff with the military, these are my experiences, and I didn't tell you which was which, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That's all I'm saying. Alright? I'm trying not to be controversial, okay? I'm really trying. But also, like, I want to have this channel so y'all can get to know me. Y'all get to know about my life. Like, what shaped me as a human being. And, that can relate with books. So, anyway, that all had to do with question number 2, which was Atonement, which was, a book on pre-order. Y'all. So, yeah, I don't know when this book came out, but I must have pre-ordered it because I got the movie cover for it. So I'm thinking, I think I remember that I had to pre-order that. And I don't even think Amazon was a thing yet, so I don't even know where I did it. Amazon might have just become a thing. I don't know. Can y'all believe that? I'm old enough to have not been around with Amazon. It seems so weird. Same thing with social media. Social media was not a thing until like 2007. I was 17, so I was a junior in high school before social media became a thing. Oh, I was there for MySpace. Like... That was our first social media. We thought Facebook was for old people, and then Facebook became the cool thing, and then it was Twitter, and then it was Instagram, and now it's TikTok. YouTube's just kind of been like somewhere in the middle the whole time. It's been a little consistent, but anyway. Moving on to the next one is a book with red flags, aka trigger warnings. A book that needs some trigger warnings. I'm going to go with The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Oh my gosh. A book that everyone should read, but also that everyone shouldn't read because it's very triggering. So, if you are triggered by essay, don't read this book because, yeah, it's gonna be triggering. But if you're not, or if you can make it through it, then I would definitely say power through this thing. Just keep your mental health at the forefront. If you need to step away between like reading a couple chapters, step away. Same thing with like physical or emotional abuse as well toward children. There's also racial stuff that happens in here. So the whole premise of the story is that this young black girl wants to have blue eyes because she has seen other kids in the neighborhood with their blonde hair, blue eyes, and the treatment that they get is much more favorable than the treatment that she gets. So much so that there is literally a scene in the book where she is with her mother, who is kind of like a maid or cook, that sort of thing, like a house helper, whatever you want to call them. She's cooking this white woman a blueberry pie. I think it was blueberry. Don't really matter. It was a pie, okay? She's cooking her a pie. And it comes out of the oven, and something happens where the pie falls on the daughter. If you have ever had something like that, where it's like the liquid was boiling, and then it gets on your skin, whoo, you can get a burn when you do a microwave dinner and you pull back the plastic part on the top and the steam comes out really fast and it burns you and it feels really bad. So just imagine that, but with actual food. And so it's like way worse than that. And so it gets on her. And what does the mom do? She's basically cussing out her daughter for the pie being ruined. Not at all concerned about the fact that this blueberry stuff is like melting off her daughter's flesh. Oh, it's just horrible. And then she's getting assaulted by the dad, and I'm pretty sure like the mom was in the room. It's been a while since I've read this. It was in college, I think, that I read it. I think it was in college. Probably my freshman year in college that I read this. But yeah, just that level of torment and neglect and abuse and just, oh my gosh, heart-wrenching story, but really puts you in the eyes of this character. The most like visceral memory I guess I have of this story was not only the pie scene, but also the scenes where she was being assaulted and she's laying there and she's like, and I let my toes fade away and I let my feet fade away and my knees and my hips and my all the way up to the top of her head, like literally disassociating from herself in order to cope with what was happening. And this is a similar response that I've heard from people that are close to me that have also went through childhood sexual abuse, where you have to disassociate. For some people, it's a temporary disassociation. For some people, it literally leads to disorders like dissociative identity disorder, that stems from childhood trauma, where your brain is so magnificent that it literally creates these alters who can kind of carry that burden for you so that you don't have to be re-traumatized by it all the time. So I watch a lot of videos about that, and yeah, abuse, stuff like that is just something that I feel so strongly about. There's just so many people that face that. It's just hard. But yeah, so that book definitely deals with it. And then number 4, a book that is over 100 years old. I'm going to go with Hard Times by Charles Dickens. This is interesting because if you recall early in the video, I talked about having to use the child version of Great Expectations, and I still couldn't get through that, even though it had pictures. But I really, 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 really enjoyed Hard Times by Charles Dickens. I think I was reading this around the winter time because I recall being in band and I was reading this book, and one of my best friends, Chelsea, was like, she would braid my hair. She had these long fingernails too, so it was like I was getting a little massage every day. Maybe that helped. So because I was getting like a head massage and just feeling really good when I was reading, that I associate those positive feelings with the book. I don't know. But it did have some twists and turns that I still do not forget. Like, they're still here. So the things that I could tell you are more so spoilers, like a fire that happens in the book. And some identities of people that have been under disguised, and familial connections that are discovered in the book. There's just so many little things that are super interesting about this, where I'm like, if you're going to start a classic by Charles Dickens, and it's not A Christmas Carol, which I have not read, but you know, I've seen the movies. I feel like that's sort of like a cultural thing that people have been exposed to in some sort of way. But yeah, other than that, Hard Times by Charles Dickens, I definitely would recommend that. It's just interesting. It might be a little stiff in the beginning, but just get through the first 100 pages and it will take off because all of the information is going to come together. All right, then we're going to go on to number 5, which is a book studied in school. Well, all of these books have been studied in school. So that's kind of how I came up with to do it this way. And I'm going to go with Peace Like a River. Now, I don't remember hardly anything about this one. I think there was a little bit of a religious element, and I remember like a little scene where maybe the boy was like walking across something narrow, like a trailer that you put on the back of a truck or something. I can't remember. But it was very atmospheric. I remember that. I think the dad would pray all the time, but I can't remember. I feel like there was some sort of magical realism to it, to the prayer element, or like miracle element, or just something like that. I can't really remember a lot about the book. I just remember I did enjoy reading it. It was interesting, and it would be more so of a modern classic. It is not a super old book. So more modern, like Atonement, but still old. And then we're going to go with number 6, which is Left You an Emotional Wreck. Oh my gosh. We're going to go with Tears of a Tiger. Whoo! Big warning for suicide ideation. Whoo! Yes. So yeah, that one. Golly. So yeah, suicidal ideation, guilt, death, grief, all sorts of things in this book. It is a hard read. Yeah, it was, oh my gosh. So Tears of a Tiger is about a guy named Andy. I read this in 9th grade, and it was assigned reading, and we were only supposed to read 4 chapters, and I read the whole book. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, and I was crying so hard that I couldn't even read the last few pages through my tears because it was just blurry. Like, I could not see the words. That is how emotional this read was. Oh, man. And so it's following this guy on his journey to, like, overcome the guilt of being one of the reasons why his friend's no longer alive. So he and his buddies were all on the basketball team. And so they would keep beer in the back of the trunk so that it would get cold during the game. And then they would go drinking and driving. So they were drinking and driving, and Andy was the one that was driving. And they wound up running into like a barricade or something that they weren't expecting. Like over a bridge or on the interstate. I can't quite remember the specific details. But either way, they wreck the car. And his friend is one of the very tall basketball players. Like, he's like the center or something because he's so tall. And so he has his legs on the dashboard. This is like chapter number 1, by the way. I'm really not spoiling anything. And so his legs get stuck in the windshield. Like, they go through the windshield and they're stuck there. And then the car it's lit on fire. Like, it's blowing up. And so everyone's able to escape except for the friend. And he's literally crying out for help from Andy as he's burning alive in this car. So that's chapter 1. That's chapter 1. And so we see Andy trying to reach out to his loved ones. Like, he's got a younger brother. He's going to a therapist. He has this girlfriend who can't fully understand the grief, but is doing her best to try to be there for him. Just all these different people in his life. And then it gets to that breaking point where he's literally in there with a gun to his head. And he's like, I can't make it through this. And so he's reaching out to like 8 different people. And no one's there for him when he needs it most. So like the girlfriend's mom answers the phone and like, hey, it's midnight. Why are you calling? No, she can't come to the phone right now. Or the therapist, the secretary at the office is like, oh, he's on a plane right now. He can't take any calls. Like, you know, he'll be able to call you back this time. Just so many people that he's trying to reach out to so that he doesn't take this last step. And I feel like after reading this book, maybe there will be less anger that I feel like sometimes comes with if you have had a loved one who has died by suicide. There's less anger toward it because you understand that some people do reach out. They don't all just quote unquote give up. There's more to it, and so I feel like it will leave you having more compassion. Now, I won't tell you if he actually goes through with it or not. That's going to be something that you'll have to discover with reading the book. But even if you don't finish the book and you just get to the contemplation part, I feel like it would definitely leave you with more understanding and sympathy towards people that do have that level of depression, to where it's a mental illness and it is something that you might not have control over. And so, yeah, I just think it will leave you more understanding and more compassionate, and less judgmental, and making out those people to be like the most selfish of selfish, because it is an act that leaves it changes everyone's life that's left behind. Luckily, I have not faced that on a first hand level, but like, it stretches so far to the point where there was this one girl. It was in 4th grade, and it was April Fool's Day. And I cannot ever forget this on April Fool's Day, even though this happened in like 2004. No, I was in 5th grade in 2000. So this was before this. So it was like 1999. Am I that old? What? Maybe I was in 8th grade. I don't know, but anyway, it was April Fool's Day. I think I might have been in 8th grade. It was April Fool's Day, and we got to our social studies teacher, and she was like, all right, everybody, I need y'all to sit down and be quiet. And so we did, and she was like, y'all may have been hearing a rumor going around that so-and-so's dad died. And this was like a church-going family man, was always there for like the children's sports and all this other kind of stuff. And people were laughing because they literally thought that it was a joke, like someone was trying to play this prank on this girl that her dad had died. And what wound up happening is that the mother had come home and had found him. So he really did die by suicide. And so so the teacher was like, it's not a joke. This actually happened. And then we had like grief counselors come into the school. And yeah, so it was rough. Like, cause you're like, I didn't even know this person, but like I knew the daughter, if that made sense. And we weren't friends, but it's still, that just shows you how far the reach of an act like that can go, to where it even affects people that have no connection, like no real connection to the person that's no longer with us. So it's tough. And that's like one of my things where I do tend to avoid those sorts of books or shows or anything like that has to do with that, because I think about what made the person so depressed that they felt like that was their only option. And I don't like getting into that mental space. So I think Tears of a Tiger was good for me to read so that I could be more understanding, because I read Tears of a Tiger after this had happened. But yeah, there's definitely, I think there's a sense of anger and injustice when that sort of thing happens, because it's like, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you ask for help? Why did you do that? And so, yeah, I just can't imagine what people go through when it's someone that they are close to, having those same thought processes, and just, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it's just sad. And so, yeah, that book would definitely be one to read if you want to understand a little bit more about why that happens. A modern one that has to do with that, would kind of be a spoiler, because you don't know that that's what the case is, so it spoils the whole book. But that's the point of the book, is that it's not always the people that you suspect. Sometimes it's the happy cheerleaders that are severely depressed and that choose that option. You don't always see it coming, and so you can't like spend the rest of your life blaming yourself for it, because ultimately it was their decision, not yours. And there's signs, but sometimes you don't see the signs until after the fact. So I'll hold up my hand and tell you what the book is that I'm referencing. That's a newer book that's out like a couple of years ago, so that I don't spoil it for you, but it does definitely deal with that. It also has one of the best character voices I've ever read. It's not the main character who does it. It's like a character that you never see in the book. But anyway, I'll tell you who it is. So when my hand goes down, I will have said it and the spoiler's gone away. Are you ready? So that book is The 100 Lies of Lizzie Lovett by Chelsea Sidoti. I believe that's who wrote that one, but it's definitely 100 Lies of Lizzie Lovett. So, amazing book. It also goes over, like, sex. And so she has sex with this college guy that was the girl's boyfriend as they were investigating what happened, because a lot of people in the media tried to say that he did something to her because they haven't found a body in the book. So there's this big mystery of where she disappeared to. And they were on a camping trip and she went off in the middle of the night. And so he thinks she got lost in the woods, but she didn't. She went and found a tree to do that. So yeah, but there's also where they have sex and then it's not what the character expects it to be. The character expects it to be like this life-changing moment. This like, you know, this means that he's in love with me, all of this other stuff, and it doesn't. And so sometimes that's the case where you might have sex, but it wasn't the right person, it wasn't the right time. And so there's that exploration as well. I think sometimes in YA it's all like, oh, we had sex, everything's great, and that's not always the case. More times than not, that's not the case, and usually you wind up breaking up with the person like a week later because they got what they wanted. That's one of the reasons, like non-religious reasons, why I did not have sex before I got married, because every single relationship I had seen that had sex before marriage failed. And so I was like, I'm not gonna have that happen to me. So I didn't. And I'm sure there's like other reasons that go along with it, but I'm just like, if someone loves you, they will wait. They will wait. And then you don't have to worry about the possibility of it ending badly with you regretting your choices or regretting the person. Because maybe, you know, you're fine. You're at the level where you can do that and it's not going to, you know, disrupt your life. If it doesn't work out for you in the end, then fine, you know, go do what you want to do. But for a lot of people, it's not a positive experience. And so this book shows that without ever, it shows that, but in a way where it's not preachy, saying that, oh, if you have sex before marriage, it's going to wind up horrible. This book does not do that. So it's not, that's not supposed to be like the message of the book and why the author put the sex in there. It's just showing the reality that sometimes it doesn't go the way you want it to go. And I think that that's needed in books. There can still be sex positivity while still showing the downside, because sometimes it's not pretty. So yeah, anyway, there's that. Y'all, I just get all TMI up in these videos, but whatever. And again, I tag Pages by Pego, Books to Ashes, Sasha Reads, Sin's Book Nook, Bandana Book Mom, and that is all for this tag. It was a short one, and yet it still ended up being 40 minutes. What can I say? I don't know. This is just how I am. This is just how I try to be as open and honest with y'all as possible, but also I don't like to step on toes or offend anybody. Which is why I took down the other video, because I rambled too much and I try to over-explain things, and then it makes it seem like I am saying the thing that I'm saying that I'm not trying to say. So I just took it down. It made me more comfortable. Better for my sanity. But yeah, hopefully nothing was like overly offensive here and y'all are all gonna stick around and y'all still like me as a person. Who knows? Who knows? If not, I think I've just come to the point where I'm just like, I have to accept that you can't truly be 100% authentically yourself if you're always scared of rejection. And I do have like high rejection sensitivity because it's been the reality for me my whole life, where you open up too much and then people run away. So yeah, I'm trying to not let that stop me from just being open, but that's very hard now with like social media and stuff like that, because people can take one little thing you say, even if it's not the way you mean something, or even if it is the way you mean something and they just take offense to it because they don't agree with it, share that around with everybody else, and if they have more influence than you do, then you're automatically the bad guy. And so, yeah, you can lose everyone. And that's happened to me before, too. Granted, that time it was my fault. But, yeah, I don't want that to ever happen again. So I am maybe overly cautious sometimes with how much I put out to the world, if that makes sense. But hopefully y'all can understand me and accept me, because that's the ultimate goal, is just be accepted. But anyway, that's all I have for you. If you stick around, we're friends, okay? Like, if you hear me with all my spiels and rants and just, I don't know, maybe talking too much or saying too much, and you still like me, then just consider us true friends, and you can reach out to me whenever, and we can just be buddy, because those are the type of people I want in my life, not the ones who latch onto one thing you say and then just completely dismiss who you are as a person and consider you to be like this flawed human being because they don't agree with something. I don't want to surround myself by those people. So I just have to accept that those people may exist in my circles, and when I do or say something they don't like, they'll leave, and that's okay. And even if they bring a handful of people with them and team up against me, then it is what it is. I'm not going to disappear from the internet again, because that was hard, and I don't want to do that again. So, yeah. I'm a flawed human being. If I ever do say anything that offends you, or you just think maybe I'm ignorant about something, I don't understand something, please just reach out to me on a personal one-to-one level, and we can try to resolve it, or come to some better understanding of each other. But I need to get to a place where I can just be me, and that's okay. So yeah, I think we're done here. Maybe I got too open. I talk too much, y'all. It's a thing. It's a thing. I don't know if it's a flaw or a blessing. Y'all tell me in the comments. But that's all for this one. Thanks so much for tagging me, Greg. I look forward to maybe doing some more of your tags in the future. And yeah, I will see all of you later. Bye!